Before you are born, you have standards that are waiting to be met. You have a due date, your first words, first steps, and many other firsts that are expected of you. Every individual learns to do these things at different times and at different places. I was raised by a teacher, which meant that every opportunity there was to go to school, I was there. I've also read many scholarly articles that have been written about testing and school competency. I hope you will enjoy hearing about test scores and how they indicate a school's competency as much as I've enjoyed preparing the speech for you. First, I will talk about the history of standardized testing. Second, I will talk about the purpose and some effects of testing on students, schools, and teachers. Finally, I will talk about whether test scores give us the entire picture of what occurs in the schools. Let's begin with some history. Standardized testing has been a part of American education long before great-grandparents were born. The first standardized tests were created in the 19th century, around 1840 and 1875, to bring about reform and equalization. America began using testing of students as a means to help equalize education. They replaced oral testing with written testing when education changed from servicing the elite to servicing the masses, believing it would inject the needed adrenaline into a rapidly changing bureaucratic school system. The inception of standardized tests was perceived as an instrument of reform. Early written examinations focused on the basics. Testing was motivated in part by a deep commitment and fairness in educational opportunities. In 2002, the No Child Left Behind Act, NCLB, ensured that all students received a fair and equal chance to a first-rate education with accountability. The NCLB placed more emphasis on test scores by requiring schools to meet adequate yearly progress benchmarks. The students are required to score at a proficient level or above to pass on to the next level, emphasizing the importance of standardized test scores, which magnifies challenges for school administrators across the nation. The NCLB Act had more accountability for standardized test scores, creating more stress for school systems, administrators, and teachers. It divides schools into these in which students scores at the proficient level or above on state tests to meet adequate yearly progress benchmarks, and those that fail to make a lead paint. The scores are tied to money schools receive for extra educational assistance for poor children in return for improvements in their academic progress. Now that we have covered history, let's move on to the purpose of standardized testing. Testing is used to assess student learning, hold schools and teachers accountable for results, and to allocate educational opportunities, creating both positive and negative effects. Standardized tests measure how students compare to other students and how much they have learned about a subject. Federal and state education policy has been driven by the assumption that test scores are a meaningful and beneficial measure of what children need to know. Many students benefit from scores by earning placement in advanced classes. Students with scores close to passing are likely to perform closer to the average when tested more than once. Students who do not score well on tests are placed in lower level classes to get further assistance. Despite their intent, test scores have also been shown to not benefit students in schools. Testing may be the primary culprit behind the declining public high school graduation rates since the NCLB expanded their use in 2002. Students from a low-income family background or identified with an ethnic or racial minority group may have negatively impacted test scores due to potential testing differences. Testing results are also used as a standard for measuring a school's progress, but they can also have a negative and positive issues as well. Failure to score an achievement level results in the school being identified as need of improvement, which is reported on a yearly report card and available to the community. If the school does not have enough students achieving a certain number of proficient, they are required to increase adequate yearly progress and are monitored closely. On the contrary, schools that are successful on school testing, they use the test as a standard for measuring the school's progress toward developing the skills and ability of students, serving as a role in learning. Knowing that standardized tests can serve to help guide students' learning might allow some of the major concerns that students, school administrators, and governments have. On the other hand, yearly test scores may not be giving us the whole picture of what's going on in the school classrooms. With the emphasis being placed on standardized testing, principals are at the forefront of the accountability. Effective leadership is paramount to ensuring schools are successful in meeting state and local standards. Principals are required to meet face-to-face with their boss regularly on their school's progress and steps they took to improve the school's status. Principals must increase their AYP scores to above 70% in order to be removed from the watch list. Teacher success rate may be evaluated by principals according to how the students perform on the standardized tests. If what the teachers teach in the classroom is not geared towards increasing the AYP scores, the principals may encourage the teachers to revise their learning objectives. Thus, from a principal's perspective, all materials need to be covered are based on what gives the schools a better chance at achieving higher scores. Contrary to helping, test scores do not show administrators why some teachers are high performers or low performers, which could cause various issues. Teaching in schools with increasing test scores report feeling more pressure from every source, more so than teachers in schools with stable or decreasing scores. Teachers may be spending instructional time teaching how to do the test rather than students learning how to do all the subjects to their fullest ability. Effective learning is a teacher's place of students' commitment to diligence and learning tasks. Due to students learning at different paces, all areas may be mastered prior to the standard tests. Students' test scores should be put in context and should not automatically occupy a student's demand and satisfaction as short-term measures of school success or failure. Let's recap what we have covered today in order to help you decide on whether or not a school's competency can be based on their test scores. First, we talked about the accountability of schools performing on standardized tests being around since early American history. Second, we talked about the purpose of testing a student to help evaluate a school's competency, students, teachers, and the schools itself. Finally, we talked about how test scores may not give us the whole entire picture of what goes on in the classroom, testing being only a portion of it. Next time you go into a school, pay attention to whether or not a school is competent based on their test scores or based on what is being taught. Thank you.